can smell a sales pitch from a mile away, but when somebody is just sharing what they love and inviting you to participate in something that they love, there's no sales to it.
What lights me up and what juices me is my faith.
There is a vulnerability of sharing things that juice you and energize you.
And when one is sitting in alignment with what juices them, what lights them up, that is how you live purposely. And that is, in fact, your purpose.
You're going to find your tribe, those people that will take you up on your invitation. Regardless of whether or not you find no one, you still find yourself at the same time.
And it's the easiest in finding one's purpose with a capital P when you do what you love.
I was raised with the idea that whatever you love, you have to do for your job. It just separates that also. And I have lots of loves. I've baking and stained glass and working out, rock climbing.
I just want to empower people to own what juices them and believe that what juices them matters and is worthy of gifting to others. So sharing is purpose.
The simplicity is what makes it so powerful. Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio.
Listeners, we're so glad you're with us today. And I am going to kick us off because I had something happen last night that just connects back with things that we've been talking about. And also this idea of our superpowers and who we are, version 2.0. And so I'm just going to launch in the story and see where it takes us. You asked, or you posed a really great question in a previous episode about, where is your favorite self? Right. Mm-hmm. And that question has really stuck with me. It's one that I keep coming back to because I just love that question. Last night, I was fortunate enough to go to a wine tasting event. And I'm not a big wine person. I enjoy wine, but I have reconnected with a friend of mine from college and his wife. And so we went to this event. And the gentleman that was leading it, first of all, was just a hoot of a person to begin with, just so fun and energetic and lively and everything. And it was a small group, maybe 7 people total sitting around this table. And the theme for the wine tasting was old world versus new world wines. So like old world is, Italy, France, Spain, et cetera. New world is Australia, United States, et cetera. So again, I'm not a big wine person, but was excited about this. I love to learn and I love to, know more about it. But what struck me the most is the person that was leading this loves wine, loves wine, loves the history behind it, loves how you can learn about various cultures through wine, also history, like talked a lot about colonization, and you can't talk about wine producing without talking about colonization, and got into some, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI conversations and everything.
Fascinating.
It was super fascinating, right? And you're talking about the way that people cultivate the land and the way they take care of the land. So it was a very heady conversation. But I was struck so many times just watching this person in their element, just watching somebody do what they love and what pulls them and what juices them and where they're their favorite self and where they're aligned. And I have to say, as maybe corny as this sounds, there was like a glow about him. You know what I mean? Like he literally was emanating something. And it was also contagious. So as the participant in this wine tasting, I was struck with gratitude because I felt like I was equally sharing in this excitement for wine and kind of the study of it and the tasting and, compare this and that's because of this. And then the stories and wanting to know more. And so for this hour and a half or 2 hours, I was invited to know more about this person, right? Mm-hmm. And also just see how incredibly beautiful it is when somebody is themselves, right? Is yes. Like living in their space. And so I couldn't help but wonder, or I couldn't help but think about what we've talked about in terms of our favorite self, and also what it's like to live in that space ourselves and then witness somebody else. So I share that today as a real story to see when somebody is just glowing and is just themselves. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've talked about that in previous episodes last year. I love saying last year, by the way, because here we are in our second year. It's just amazing. But, we talked about in an episode last year of this kind of overarching, heavy, weighty idea of you have to find your purpose in life with a capital P, and kind of enveloped into that idea of finding your purpose. It's as if it's supposed to be this, huge, obvious, world changing thing that is newsworthy, and let's keep searching for this purpose with a capital P. But really, in living purposefully, that's where one lives mindfully and can find purpose with a capital P in anything and everything they do. And it's the easiest in finding one's purpose with a capital P when you do what you love. And so for that gentleman, his purpose is found in his love of wine, and how his love of wine and his knowledge of wine actually is expansive, not only in that he can expand by sharing it with other people, but even taking the it's kind of like taking a little grape, taking the idea of winemaking, and he developed that into something greater in terms of talking about, culture, society, old world, new world, history, DEI. How amazing that from a little a little thing, seemingly, and I don't mean to say that, actually, it's not a little thing. It's a wonderful thing. It was all encompassing for him. But in doing that, that burgeoned and flourished into something more expansive for himself and his appreciation, not only of wine, but of the world and of history, but then expands even further, sharing it with you and everybody that was there at that event. And when one is sitting in alignment with what sparks them, what juices them, what lights them up, that is how you live purposely. And that is, in fact, your purpose. And we talked about this in episodes last year about, it's not about, always leading one to many. It can be one to one many, many times. So his sharing of that touched you and impacted you. And that is purposeful. So it's not about always striving to be the CEO or the manager or the director or the person with the title. It's sharing of what comes naturally for you as your gift. That is purposeful, impactful, meaningful, significant, valuable. I can't help but remember, as you're talking about this person who just has this infectious, contagious love of wine, in visiting my daughter just recently, there is a quaint little cafe. It's called, I'm going to shout it out for anybody who's in New Haven, La Choupette Crêperie. So it's a crêpe. It's a crêpe cafe, and Monsieur Adil is the owner, and it's a beautiful story, actually. So it actually years ago started off that he had a crêpe cart. So, not even a food truck, a crêpe cart. And then that became popular. And so then he opened a brick and mortar crêperie. And then now he has a sister cafe as well. And it's just great and wonderful that you can see that he is successful in what he does, but that success comes because of the passion and the purpose that he feels in every, clip that's made, and in every in every customer that comes in. And what I mean by that is, when I walked into La Crêperie this visit, and in my last visit months ago, he greets you like you are family, as if he's known you, and he talks to you and chit chats with you about many things, about art, politics, philosophy. And it was just such a joy. And it was so clear that was his purpose in giving and sharing what he's passionate about. That is impactful, meaningful, valuable, and quite frankly, has led to his success,
Mhm.
and success is defined in many different ways, just as impact and value can be defined in many different ways. So, he certainly impacted me by feeling very special. Like he transported me as if I was, in a little cafe in Paris, and I walked out feeling very fashionable, that like I was in Paris. And I'm just laughing because this is going to sound like it's all about food and wine, but going to bakeries here or restaurants here, how managers and hostesses make me feel, how our shared hairdresser Sean, shout out to you, Sean, how beautiful and special I feel after he does my hair. And there is impact and there is purpose and there is value in whatever one does, especially when one does it from a place of love and passion and being juiced by it.
Mm-hmm. I have to. Okay, so I can't say this as beautifully as you can. I'm terrible with French, so I'm just gonna butcher it with how were the crepes? I have to ask. They were probably delicious. Right.
Les crêpes, c'est fantastique. Oh. They were fabulous. And he was just very like generous with sharing his love of crepes. And so he like gifted all of the customers, oh, now you have to try this. And now you have to try this. And I won't charge you for it. I want you to taste it. And it's just so funny because one of my favorite ones, and I was so stuffed. And I said, Monsieur Adil, I am stuffed. I cannot eat another bite. He said, oh, this one is light. And this one is my favorite. And it was just a crepe with lemon and honey and toasted almonds. Ooh. And it was so amazing. And it even that spoke to me because I was like, wow, the simplicity and the authenticity of this simple crepe, as opposed to the like dollop it with Nutella and liquor and all that kind of stuff. It was just the simplicity of it. His joy for it translated through in the food and in the experience of it. So it doesn't always, that again, to the point of, it doesn't always have to be this like fireworks, newsworthy, media worthy, postable worthy thing. Purpose can come from passion, and it can seemingly be small, but you have no idea the impact of that on yourself and others.
And to build on that, there is a gentleman who does climbing classes at the climbing gym that I go to. And he does that on the side. He has a job, a 9-to-5 job during Monday through Friday. So he freelances, for lack of a better word, as a climbing instructor on the side because he loves climbing so much. And while he has said, I didn't want to pursue a career necessarily in teaching climbing, I love it so much. And I geek out about it and I want to talk about it, that for me, my purpose is fulfilled and satisfied by just taking a couple classes a week and having a small group of 4 or 5 students and inviting them into this endeavor that has given him so much. It's fascinating because having taken 2 classes with him now, the level with which he feels more comfortable getting into quote unquote his nerddom, which is what he calls his nerddom about climbing, becomes even just bigger and more magnanimous. Like you see it, right? And it just, he can't stop talking about it. He's smiling. And now my energy about climbing, and I suppose many others of his students have similar takeaways, and we have benefited from the sharing on his part, his love of something and his passion for something, and we've taken that into our climbing also. So much like Monsieur Adil, is that right?
Yes.
In a non-food related moment, this is somebody who recognized that his career, his job was not going to be in climbing, but he still found a way to incorporate it into his life, you know?
Yes.
And how cool is that? Because I will say, I think I was raised with the idea that whatever you love, you have to do for your job. And it just separates that also. And you can say, and I have lots of loves. I've talked about baking and stained glass and working out and rock climbing, and they all fit in my life. And I love teaching and I love education. So all of those little things that are where I feel my favorite self have all found a place still somewhere in who I am and what I do.
And when you come from a place of passion, which can become a purpose, it doesn't have to be one purpose or your sole purpose. It can be a purpose that is inviting for those who want to be invited. And where I'm going with this is, as you were talking, I was thinking, where am I juiced the most? Like what almost comes like easy for me, that is easy for me to even share with others. And I have to say that it's actually my faith and talking about my faith, and not with the intent of like shoving it down, people's throats dogmatically. No, it's more just like what lights me up and what juices me and what moves me and what pulls me and what inspires me is my faith. And I think of the extreme sides of religious doctrine. And I think of the extreme sides of organized religion, where the extremism becomes so exclusive. And in being so exclusive and condemning and judgmental, how in any way is that inviting to people to perhaps suspend their disbelief and consider where you are coming from in terms of your faith? And no wonder there seems to be people leaving organized religion when they are feeling less than or not enough or judged or perpetually damned, and that they have to earn the love and earn mercy. For me, I just feel like it's not for me to judge. It's just for me to live out my faith. And in living out my faith, I would like to think that that's inviting. And just like the wine person invited you to explore wine a little bit more, and Monsieur Adil invited me to invite other customers to enjoy and see crepes in a different way. Same thing for what ignites me, which is my faith. I strive, I'm not good at it all the time, but I certainly strive to be more of an invitation to faith as opposed to excluding, judging, damning, separating.
Yeah, you want to share it.
Yes.
And it's up to the other person if they want to participate in that sharing. But you're absolutely right. It is an invitation, and somebody can say no. And, we don't necessarily have to like crepes and be like, no, we're not going to go there. So we would never meet Mr. Adil or Monsieur Adil, right? In the same way that I think you're absolutely right about organized religion as a queer person. Often the message for some religions is that I don't belong, right? That there's something wrong with me. And it's not really an invitation, right? I am now made to feel less than. And then at the same time, I'm being sold on something that I don't want to buy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than, and I don't want to take us down this road, so forgive me if this is too far of a tangent, but you can smell a sales pitch from a mile away. But when somebody is just sharing what they love and inviting you to participate in something that they love, there's no quote unquote sales to it. It's either you want to know more and you want to join them, or you just like, that's not for me. And I'm okay with that. Right.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be debate, convince, argue, sell. It's just be and just show. And in that manner, you are now a living invitation.
It's a really beautiful moment, I will say. And having been on the receiving end, particularly with you, Elizabeth, when you have shared, in private conversations about your faith in particular, to see somebody you love and what juices them come out. And then to have it with a stranger, there's truly a connection that I think happens in that moment. And it's really, even if you don't take them up on the invitation. Okay, so let's say you are talking about your faith and I'm learning about you. And ultimately I realize, okay, that's maybe not the faith that I want to join, so to speak. I still get this wonderful invitation to connect and know more about you and learn about you. Mm-hmm. And then tangentially or just reciprocally think about myself and come back to myself. Where are the opportunities for me to invite you into things about me that I love and feel juiced with, and maybe what my superpowers are, or that there's, even in the no, like no thanks, that doesn't mean that there's a disconnect, per a previous episode that we've talked about. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I just thank you, because I've been the recipient of you inviting me to know what juices you and what pulls you and what one of your purposes are. Because just in and of itself, that is a very human and a very strong connection with another human. That with the wine guy, I'm just truly grateful that it existed and it happened, and I'm blessed for the better because of it. You know, we were in a previous episode, we were also talking about, well, we were encouraging the other to find their superpowers, right? And this is kind of I'll say for myself, a little place of discomfort, because I'm like, this feels a little weird to acknowledge one's superpowers, because we all have more than one, as you have said. But when I was reflecting about the gentleman in the wine class, I got to thinking about, are there similar moments for myself, and coming back to Simply Enough and who I am, and where are those moments when I feel the most jazzed or the most juiced, or perhaps I am doing that to others. It reminded me of a conversation that I had with a friend of mine about American Sign Language. And he said to me, wow, you really love sign language, don't you? And I said, I do. I really do. I love the people. I love the culture. I love the language. I love the opportunity to express. And he's like, it just is kind of coming out of you, you know, and you're just like, it's radiating, and et cetera. And thinking about Simply Enough and how we encouraged ourselves to think about our superpowers, I was also excited at the opportunity to think about, where are those moments when I think, my favorite self, and where are those opportunities for me to exhibit to others invitations into knowing more about me, or things that I am just really excited about. And I haven't really talked too much on the podcast, but I would like to do that right now, if that's okay. I love, and I haven't really shared too much, but I love making stained glass windows. I love the artistic side of it, and I love the mathematical side of it. I love that there's chemistry involved, and you have to melt metal and seam glass together, and glass likes to break on a straight line. And so if you want to make curves, you have to figure out how to break the glass into small, like little lines. And if you're doing an internal curve versus an external curve, it's a totally different process. And you know, there are restrictions to the way that glass likes to break. But nonetheless, it's all an art form that is both artistic and creative, and also very mathematical, which is where my brain likes to live. So when I talk about glass and glass making, and also windows that I've made, I like to share the process of how I broke the glass, and how I soldered the glass pieces together, and why I made choices that I did. And I like to invite people into this world that is very exciting for me, as a way of talking out loud who I am, and, you know, where my favorite self lives. And I realized that in the podcast, I haven't really done that. And I wanted to, in this moment, I wanted to talk a little bit about glass as a way of demonstrating exactly what we're talking about, which was a reflective moment on my part. Like, where are those spots in my life that I feel I found my favorite self? And can I share that with you, Dr. Ignacio, and maybe share it with our listeners? So I just wanted to live that example right now with all of you. And I hope that's okay.
Yeah, you do that a lot, Zachary. I have to just tell you, like, is that okay? Of course it's okay. And it's amazing. And I didn't know that. And it's fascinating. I had no idea. And so now I have a newer appreciation of that, and an appreciation of you and what juices you. And I just, even in the question, like, is that okay for me to share? I just want to empower people to own what juices them, and believe that what juices them matters and is worthy of gifting to others and sharing. You know, I will say I get a lot from people not in the healthcare community, almost kind of like glorifying. Well, now in the pandemic, there's also condemnation too. But there are those that like glorify, like, oh well, how can you not feel enough? You're a doctor, and you quote save lives, and it's this like big dramatic thing. And I really truly mean this, that when you are giving of yourself and you are giving of your gift, that is impactful, that is valuable, that is meaningful. And I'm not being trite when I say, when I go into a bakery and the baker gives me, 13 cookies as opposed to 12, or their favorite one cookie, or again, like our mutual hairdresser, Sean, his making me feel as I go out of his salon that day that, I'm feeling glamorous, or I'm feeling put together, or I'm just feeling better than I felt before I walked in that day. That is meaningful, and that is impactful, and that is valuable. So sharing what comes naturally to you and what you are gifted in is purpose.
There is a vulnerability of sharing things that really juice you and energize you. There really is a true vulnerability there. And
because it matters to you so much, that what if it's not received that way?
Correct. And if it's not received that way, or it's belittled or demeaned, or if it's somehow seen as like, oh, that's kind of freaky, or that's kind of weird, that kind of thing. And so I recognize that even in the asking of it's okay, it's an acknowledgement that not only is there a vulnerability, but because there is so much importance, there is a little bit of nervousness or fear that it's not going to be received with the invitation that you give it. And yet, I have openly admitted, I'm one of my superpowers, I think, is leading with vulnerability. And here is still where there's work to do. And I'm excited about that, which is acknowledge that insecurity about sharing a passion or a purpose is there, yet still room to not apologize for it, and to see it as beautiful and loving and in alignment with who I am.
When it's what juices you, like my faith or your stained glass making or rock climbing, or your sense of who you are, the value of that is not diminished nor determined even by what somebody else thinks.
Yeah.
Did I oversimplify that? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
I know exactly what you're trying to say, because the number of times that I've I've chosen to come out to somebody reinforces exactly what you're saying, that you did not oversimplify it at all. In fact, the simplicity is what makes it so powerful.
There's a saying, not an ounce of my self-worth is determined by what you think of me. And that's the same thing too. I didn't come up with that. I actually have to like say that to myself as a mantra when I am feeling less than, and when I am feeling not enough, or when I am feeling judged or misjudged, is having to tell myself, again, this is where my faith does come in that my worth, my enoughness, my value, comes from the divine within. And therefore, if I am feeling judged, if I am feeling less than, if I'm feeling not enough because somebody else did something to me, said something to me, that not an ounce of my self-worth or not an ounce of what juices me and what I'm passionate about is determined by what that other person thinks, says, does, measures me, values or disvalues me or devalues me. So if you were to not like wine, that gentleman's love of wine doesn't have to be diminished because you don't like wine. If I didn't like crepes, Monsieur Adil's passion for making crepes and sharing crepes and selling crepes should not be hindered or devalued if I don't like crepes. The same is true, apply that same compassion and worth to oneself.
Which we've talked about in a previous episode, right? Is really the kindness and the grace that we would extend to others consider doing that same thing for yourself as well.
I feel like we say that in every episode because that is the crux of this podcast.
But in the way that you just so lovingly received my conversation about stained glass, and I would do the same for you and anybody else that's sharing their passion. Yeah. And I wouldn't, and if I saw them trying to apologize, I would do everything I could to reaffirm and everything. That now, why not do the same for me? In that moment. You're absolutely right. We should just end every episode like that. And remember, do this to yourself too.
Yeah. Well, we actually did do an episode called, Go Blank Yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to be chosen, choose yourself. If you want to be honored, honor yourself. If you want to be nurtured, nurture yourself. Mm-hmm. If you want to be spoiled, spoil yourself. When we talk about, wanting to share what juices you and what you're passionate about, and that kind of concern or fear or awkwardness of, well, am I going to be considered weird, or am I going to be considered out there for this being being passionate about this? The one thing I'm just going to say is share it anyway, do it anyway. Give it away anyway, gift it anyway, because it matters to you, because it juices you. Share it anyway, give it anyway, talk about it anyway. You never know the impact that that's going to have on whoever is receiving it. And if the recipient doesn't receive it, it still lights you up to talk about it, give it out, share it, do it anyway.
I'm excited that I brought this up. And I know that this episode has kind of taken a bunch of turns and twists as we've gone along. And that excites me even more. I think the piece of it that I keep coming back to is this idea of somebody living their truth and in alignment with themselves and being able to invite somebody in. My takeaway now is in those moments when I want to invite somebody to know more about me, I already know the worst thing that they could say is no, truly, right? The worst thing that they could say is no. Now, the stakes can change depending on whatever it is. If I'm coming out to somebody and I recognize that maybe I could lose a relationship or a friendship, or I want to talk about stained glass and somebody's like, oh, that's really weird. No matter which way you go, I can already anticipate the quote unquote worst thing that could happen, but that's still about them and not about me. And in that moment, I want to just share and invite somebody to know more about me. And what happens after that is it's separate. And it's really, truly a moment to connect with oneself, see oneself, invite somebody in. And the worst they can say is no. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. That doesn't mean that you don't continue, because you're going to find your people. You're going to find your tribe. You're going to find those people that will take you up on your invitation. And regardless of whether or not you find no one, you still find yourself at the same time. So I know we were kind of all over the place, and this was like a really fun kind of hodgepodge of a plate of an episode with the buffet of different things. But I think at the end of it, I am walking away with an awareness of the times that I do apologize internally at those moments when I want to invite somebody to know more about myself, when in fact, just the opportunity to be able to share something with somebody of something that juices me is already an acknowledgement of my favorite self and that I am enough just as I am, period. Do you know?
Own what juices you.
Yeah.
Own what you're passionate about. And when you live what you're passionate about, and we are all multifaceted. So there are many things. That's why there doesn't have to be one singular sole purpose with a capital P. Live your passions, share your passions, own them. And to your point, not just for others, but for yourself, because that's how you live most authentically. And honestly, that's the easiest way to live, is living your life. I think because you and I feel heard, because we're hearing and seeing each other in perhaps where we've been made to feel weird, or we've been made to feel like an outsider because of what juices us and because of what we're passionate about. That I think you and I are totally resonating with each other right now and validating each other, because It's more than okay that we love what we love. And it's more than okay that what juices us. Even if people think we're weird or we're different or, you know what I mean?
I do.
I think that's why we keep doing the yes and, because we're like, oh my God, I see you.
And listeners, remember, you are not just simply enough.
You are more than enough.
Just as you are.
Period. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Go live your passion.